Sorry, got interrupted. Of course, the one time I tried to do it. Anyways, part of life. Moving forward, I think I was talking about Dan Campbell and how that's been his process the whole year, and super important for him to follow his identity and players to know who he is and who they are, and focus on the process because that's what got him there. And people say you're playing with fire, but I would say that you should stick with your strengths, and if you lose that way, you can live with it. But if you lose the other way, and changing from what you've done in the past, I don't think that's a great thing to do. So that's my take on it. But I think a great quote by Pat McAfee, no matter what, and also from a sports psychology side, focus on the process, not the outcome. Where I saw God this week, so I watched a great movie called The Hill on Netflix about a baseball player who is crippled, has stuff on his legs, and eventually a miracle kind of happens and he's able to run, but then he has some other complications later in life. I won't tell you if he reaches his dream or not, but I think what's super cool is that miracles do happen and God provides those miracles for us. One thing that's super interesting is, one, he's able to walk. He wants to play baseball. His dad comes around. His dad's a preacher. And then ultimately he has to go 10 for 10 hitting baseballs out of the park in order to get signed. And that's kind of like going 10 for 10 in a kicking free agent combine to be the best one, right? There's 30 guys there. To be the best one, you basically got to go perfect to win. So he's basically got to go perfect in order to get a chance to play in the MLB. Right? He's got no money. He's hurting, all this kind of stuff. He's got a bum ankle. The odds are totally against him. And then he ends up going 10 for 10. And that's all I will tell you about that. But it's super, super cool because the whole point of the movie, in my opinion, is that miracles can happen and that your faith leads to you getting hope. And hope is something that can carry us to the next day over and over and over again. If you have something to look forward to, something to think about, something to pride yourself on. I wrote down here that God's will might not look like ours, but if you put in the effort, something good will happen. Right? So I wanted to be a professional athlete. Ultimately, have not got to that point. Still have that drive, desire, work ethic, all that good stuff. But ultimately, I have hope because I'm young and I know that I have a lot of good things happening. And no matter what business side, sports side, whatever I put towards my life towards, something good will happen and come out of it. So the movie's really, really good, in my opinion, and really shows you the powerful image that God has and how he can affect your daily life if we allow him to. If we allow him to. So the next thing this week is I put this month's newsletter out and talked about how we shouldn't relate our year or base our year off of January's results. All right, so you go over to Substack. I'll put the page here linked in the description, but we don't want to base our goals off of January for a couple reasons. One, the year's not over, it's just a start. Two, there's plenty of time left in the year. Three, we kind of have peaks and valleys like I've talked about. The start of the year is great, yeah, we're ready to go, and then we kind of get into those snow days and the hard times and back to work and blah, 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 whatever, fill in the blank. And so we really don't want to base it off of. For instance, I was working out and had a bad lift and dropped the bar on my femur, essentially. So I can no longer do cleans and snatches at heavy weight because basically it's too much pressure on my legs to hit the bar. So I can get stronger in other ways, but I wasn't able to hit those goals because of that injury and a little bit of a setback. Also, meditation, sometimes just too fiery going to bed, taking the dog out, walking around, moving, and thinking about the next day's stuff. So meditation, I didn't get to meditate, or I should say attempt to meditate those 5 days of the week, and some other things as well. But I know that I can still correct that. I can still make it better, and that's better than nothing. So we want to continue to know what works, what doesn't work. So I know I got to try to take the dog off a little earlier, or dog outside a little earlier, and then maybe I look on my phone for 10, 15 minutes so I can wind down, so I can still get my hours of sleep, but also I am a little bit less crazy, per se. So life is really trial and error, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Circumstances, obviously, all those kind of things play a role, but I encourage you to take your priorities and make them your priorities. Do them when you need to, and the rest of the stuff will fix itself. It'll work itself out. But those are the most important. All right, next one. what I learned this week basically is, so there's a lot of kicking competition out there, sports psychology competition out there. You got to find what really sets you apart. Why are you you? What's your purpose? Why should people come to you? So, instance, for Kohl's Kicking is the only place. Shout out to them for the sponsor, by the way. The only place where you can get recruiting, the best training out there, have 100% of people on a FBS roster for a specialist, have coaching in the whole United States for the most part, have sports psychology work that you can do, and over 25 years of experience, let alone most of the coaches have either been in the NFL or been at a high level. And it's really the most programs offered at the best price with the best coaching. And gives you the best opportunity to go to the next level, which is ultimately what most people are wanting to have. So that's what sets Kohl's apart compared to another person in the region. The other thing with my business, sports psychology, is what I think about how do I separate myself. Well, there's not very many sports psychology people out there that have, one, played professionally at a high level, two, done it at multiple sports, played 2 Division I sports, 3, are young enough to relate to the crowd that they're going to talk to, but have some experience, and 4, was a teacher or coach as well. So we kind of hit all the realms. We can relate to people. We did it at that level. We practice it ourselves, and we're able to connect with people and help them get better in multiple ways, not just in sports, but also whatever their career is going to be academically, that kind of stuff as well. So I think that you need to find what sets you apart, and that is your marketing. You are the brand. All right, so speaking of relationships, that's the next thing I learned, is that in our relationships, there's jealousy, stuff like that. So I'm a very jealous person. Then I learned I miss football all the time, watching the playoffs, watching the Pro Bowl stuff this past weekend. But something happened this past week, and I had to constantly remind myself of this. So somebody got signed to a team who I don't think is very good, and I think is wishy-washy and fakes the game and basically gets notoriety because of who they are, and I think it's a publicity stunt, which I understand. Life's about who you know and the connections you have and how can we make money. I get that. But what I wrote down is that, one, I can't let that affect my day-to-day, because that signing of that person literally does not affect my life. All right, we're 2 completely separate people, 2 completely different set of circumstances and different values, goals, all that kind of stuff. So what's the best journey? Well, I don't need to pay attention to it, right? It doesn't affect me. I shouldn't be mad for other people living my dream because they got to accomplish theirs, right? So we want to help people accomplish their dreams, but we ultimately want to accomplish our own. But positivity spreads. You make not only the people around or yourself better, but the people around you better. So we got to have positivity and prioritize the things that essentially will change my day today. Not, okay, I saw this on Twitter. This happened. They got it. Okay, that doesn't matter, right? Go work harder. Go change your approach, whatever it might be, right? Like I said last week, life keeps moving on no matter what. If you're ready or not, if it affects you or not, whatever you think of, if you let it affect you, it will. But on the day-to-day, anything on Twitter that is not involved with you, technically does not affect you. So that there might be less of a chance, whatever per se, but that doesn't affect your day-to-day, right? Your work should still be competent, still be working hard, put in the time and effort, and to be in the best version of yourself. So stay in your own lane. I tell this to kids all the time, stay in your own lane, be the best you can be, not the best whoever you saw on Twitter, Instagram could be. Last thing I learned this week, speaking of being in your head, is the stuff about momentum. So the championship games a couple weeks ago, you could see the Lions had a ton of momentum, then 49ers got it back, Chiefs, Ravens. I feel like the Chiefs didn't take advantage of their momentum opportunities and could have put the game away a lot sooner. But that being said, I learned a lot of different things on momentum, sorry. So I wrote all these down to make sure I don't mess this up. So in a way, momentum, confidence, all that kind of stuff is literally in your head because it's what you think, right? So momentum basically is awareness and confidence, right? Are you aware of what's happening? And do you have the confidence, or do you think you have the ability to change it around or keep it going, right? So momentum does have this dopamine release and the opposite effect when you are against the momentum. So cortisol, which is a stress hormone, will get released in that. So you might feel slow, sluggish, or basically like you can't change the circumstances and you're doomed, right? So first thing is to stop digging, right? If you dig a hole, first thing to do is to stop digging to get out of it. Second thing you need to do, if you are aware, is that you can snap out of it and change your thinking, right? We want to first block the negative, then we want to have a positive that we can exchange it with, and then we need to act upon it, right? So we're going to use that mind for us in order to understand these skills, to be able to practice them, to do it over and over. So when it happens in a game-like situation, like the AFC or NFC Championship game, we're able to move forward as a coach, as a player, etc. So we want to work with our hippocampus, work our mind for us in order to change those around. And that's a lot of science that we won't get into today. But on the basic side of things, here's what I will say if momentum is against you. Number one, timeouts, taking a break, all those sort of things really do work. Whatever sport you're in, can you take a breath? So first, you got to be aware. Second of all, can you take a breath? Can you go deep down and find out what is the root cause of this? And if you can do that, okay, then take a timeout. What do I need to do? What's the process to get out of this and to swing things around? Okay, so timeouts work. And then the other thing that's challenging is if you're in a team setting, the whole team needs to be on board because it's really hard to be in a gray area here. You're either, yep, we can turn this around, here's what we need to do, or it's, uh-oh, we're doomed. So if everybody's not thinking the same thing, then it's going to be hard to come back because you need all people on the field, on the court, mat, whatever it is, in order to be on the same page and believe that you're going to turn things around, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. But you can fake it till you make it, right? Actors are able to cry on the spot, all that kind of stuff. So you've got to keep telling yourself. Maybe you say it out loud. In PKs in soccer, the team that usually has the most energy and is pumped about having PKs is likely to be the team that wins it. All right, so same thing in football or whatever other basketball, whatever sport you're calling the timeout in to get that momentum back. You got to believe you can get that momentum back and make the game come to you. Because if we're just trying to push it, we might not play as well. We go to the 80% rule, put 80% of your effort into it. Because if you're too tense, you're at 100%, it's likely things won't go well. But we want to focus on our controllables, what's the process, and then good things will happen. We don't have to worry about outcomes like momentum swings, because then I guess bad things happen when you think about outcomes compared to the process, because you got to get to the outcome, and that requires a process. The last thing I will say is that timeouts and stuff are important, and everybody thinking the same way is important, because when you have a negative or traumatizing event, it takes about 5 times as much positive as it does to one negative in order to cancel each other out. So you might need a couple timeouts, you might need a couple good plays to happen. I always say go back to the fundamentals, think about what you're good at, use your strengths, go back to those, because if you lose, back to the very start of this, if you lose by not using your strengths, that's one thing. If you lose by going through your strengths, you can live with that one. They just stopped you. They were better on that day. It is what it is. But ultimately, in a way, momentum is totally made up in our brain, right? So it's what we think is going to happen. Moving forward. Can we get out of it? Yes, you can. You have to think about how we can do that. What's the root cause of why we're not? Get back to the process of how we can, and move forward with action. And you'll find that momentum swings a lot better in your favor in the end, because you have that confidence to keep it moving forward. And if it's always optimism, right? When things aren't going in your favor, you still have the opportunity to make it better, right? There's kind of much more stuff I got going on. Read a lot of books this week. Like I said, we'll get into those next week. We're about at the 20-minute mark here, so I'm going to shut it down. Learned a lot this week. I will say thank you to Vitargo and those other sponsors. Appreciate you guys. Spotify for podcasters. Couldn't put the podcast on without you guys. And last thing, little note, fun fact for you is that vegetables that you grow in your own garden have up to 5 times the amount of nutrients as it does on the store, because there's no chemicals to keep it ripe longer, and you get those natural substances out of the ground. Also builds your immune system, and it's healthier for your gut. With that, that's the end of today's podcast. Appreciate you guys listening. Let me get some feedback, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Love you. Bye.